Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're looking at something that's ever crossed your mind if you've ever thought about, say, getting some drone footage in Bali.
Yeah.
We're talking drone regulations in Indonesia. I've got excerpts from the Remote Pilot Learning book right here. And let me tell you, it was a lot more interesting than I expected.
It's funny. A lot of people get so caught up in the drones themselves. They forget it's not just about the gadget. It's about understanding the airspace you're flying in.
Right, it's not like you can just fly anywhere you want.
Exactly. You wouldn't, drive your car on a train track.
Mhm.
Each airspace has rules for a reason. Different aircraft, different rules, and that includes your drone.
So does that mean the rules are different depending on the size of the drone? Like if I have a tiny one versus a larger model?
You got it. Indonesia classifies its airspace from Class A to G. They all have different purposes, different restrictions. Class A, for example, that's usually for your big commercial airliners, high-altitude stuff. Class E, that's closer to the ground. You might find light aircraft and, yes, drones operating there.
So no buzzing around in Class A airspace with my drone then. What about like those incredible volcanic landscapes you see in photos? Any rules around those?
Now you're talking about some of the most stunning, but also potentially dangerous areas to fly. While drones can capture amazing perspectives of volcanoes flying near active ones, that's probably restricted due to volcanic activity and ash. Not to mention, the ash itself can damage your drone. Not a good mix.
Wow, I didn't even think about the ash. So say I wanted to get footage of, I don't know, a temple complex or any airspace classifications I should be aware of for that kind of drone photography.
Great question. You'd most likely be in Class G airspace, which is generally uncontrolled. But, and this is important, even within Class G, you've got limitations.
Yeah.
Restricted areas, especially around historical sites. Imagine trying to film the Borobudur Temple Complex. You'd need to be incredibly mindful of the crowds, maintain a safe distance, and you probably need permits for drone operation in such a significant location.
Yeah, you definitely don't want your drone to be the next tourist attraction because it made an unplanned landing.
Exactly. And speaking of things that can ground your flight, let's talk about something I think a lot of drone enthusiasts overlook: weather. This book, it really goes into detail about meteorology.
Yeah, I was actually just flipping through that section. It's way more in depth than I expected. What are METAR and TEFOR reports? I've never even heard of those.
Think of METAR and TAFOR reports like a super detailed weather report,
Yeah.
but specifically for pilots. And yeah, that includes us, drone pilots. They give you real-time info, wind conditions, visibility, cloud cover, basically everything you need to figure out if it's actually safe to fly.
So it's not just glancing at my weather app and hoping for the best then.
Nope. This book really stresses how important it is to get those meteorological factors right. I mean, strong winds. That can mess with your drone's stability, rain. That can damage the electronics. Even small temperature changes. You wouldn't believe it, but they can impact air density, which affects how your drone handles.
That's wild. See, I'm usually a check the weather app for rain kind of guy.
Mhm.
Had no idea there was so much more to it.
There's actually one more weather-related point from the book that I thought was super interesting.
Oh, hit me with it.
So get this. It suggests that Indonesia's monsoon season, June to August, can actually be a good time for drone photography.
Really? I would have thought all that rain and wind would make it a nightmare to fly.
Right. Total curveball. But the book says that during monsoon season, the low cloud cover can mean less atmospheric interference. So potentially clearer drone footage than other times of the year.
Wow. Never would have guessed that. This deep dive is full of surprises.
It really is. And speaking of surprises, the book gets into something that I think, especially for recreational pilots, gets overlooked a lot. Have you ever heard of crew resource management? CRM.
CRM. Isn't that something airline pilots use?
You're right, it started in commercial aviation. But the ideas behind CRM, they're relevant to all pilots, even if you're flying solo. It's really about decision-making, managing risks, staying aware of what's going on around you.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how does that actually apply to someone, flying a drone,
Yeah.
especially if they're just doing it for fun?
They actually use a great example in the book to show this. So let's say you're hired to get some aerial footage. Maybe for a client, right? But the weather, it's not ideal. The client's pushing you to fly, but you're not sure it's safe. CRM gives you the tools to look at the situation, figure out the risks, and make the best decision, even if it means telling your client no.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a tough call, especially if those gigs are how you make a living.
Exactly. And that's where CRM comes in. It helps you recognize those external pressures that might cloud your judgment, and it gives you strategies to make sure that safety is always the top priority.
So it's not just about knowing how to work your drone. It's about being able to think clearly under pressure and make those tough calls.
100%. And it's not just about saying be safe. This book actually gives you tools to help you do that. Like they talk about checklists. For example, the I'm safe checklist. It's designed to help you assess your own condition before you even take off. Are you well rested? Stressed out? Have you had enough water? Those things can impact your decision making just as much as anything else when you're flying.
Right. You wouldn't want to be flying a drone when you're exhausted or haven't had enough water.
Mhm.
Same as driving a car, I guess.
Exactly. They mention another checklist too, the PAV checklist. This one's about analyzing risks. Risks related to you, the pilot, the aircraft itself, the environment, and any external pressures that might be affecting your judgment.
So taking a moment to think about all the things that could go wrong, basically. I like that. It actually reminds me of something that happened to me a while back when I was out flying my drone.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
So it's a beautiful day, perfect for getting some shots. I had this park near my house in mind, did a quick battery check, made sure the propellers were spinning, and took off. Everything seemed fine at first, but then maybe halfway through the flight, one of the motors started making this awful grinding noise.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
It wasn't.
Uh-huh.
I got lucky, though. I was flying in a pretty open area, so I was able to bring the drone down without any damage.
Yeah,
But it was a close one.
I bet. What do you think caused it?
So afterward, I realized I kind of rushed my pre-flight check. Like, I checked the battery, but I didn't actually look at the motors.
Hmm.
Turns out, one of the cables had come loose, and it was hitting the propeller.
Wow. It's crazy how such a small thing can cause such a big problem.
Tell me about it. It really made me realize how crucial those pre-flight checks are, the ones in this remote pilot learning book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to want to skip ahead when you're excited to fly, but those few extra minutes to really check your equipment, they can make all the difference.
No doubt. And speaking of pre-flight checks, the detail they go into in this book is impressive. It goes way beyond just checking the battery and propellers. They're talking about inspecting the whole drone, looking for any damage, making sure cables are secure, even cleaning out dust from the internal components.
See, that's where I'd slip up. Sometimes those dust bunnies in my drone don't get the attention they deserve. I didn't realize it could actually cause problems.
It all adds up. It's like a car, right?
Yeah.
Regular maintenance can save you from major headaches down the line.
Great analogy. So we've covered airspace, weather, pre-flight checks, CRM. Anything else this remote pilot learning book throws at us?
Just when I thought it couldn't get any more detailed, they hit you with a curveball, an entire section on bird strikes.
Wait, what? Bird strikes? I thought that was an airplane thing, not a drone thing.
You'd be surprised. Even though drones are small, a collision with a bird, even a small one, it can do some damage, especially to the propellers or sensors. And that can lead to losing control. Definitely not ideal.
I can see how that would be bad news. So, any tips in there on how to avoid a bird-related drone disaster?
Well, the book actually cites the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO. They recommend this two-pronged approach: risk assessment and habitat management.
Okay, so for someone like me, not a pilot, what does that actually mean? How do I put those into practice?
So risk assessment, it all starts with knowing your area. Are there known bird nesting sites nearby? Are there certain times of day or times of year when the birds are more active? That's something you can actually research beforehand.
So like checking online,
Yeah.
local birding websites, or just paying attention when I'm out and about.
Exactly. And then there's habitat management. This is more about understanding what attracts birds to an area, right? And then if you can, making those areas less appealing to birds. So maybe minimizing food sources, using bird deterrents, or even just thinking about the landscaping. Is there something that might be encouraging birds to, roost or nest in that spot?
That's interesting. So it's like I got to become a bit of a bird expert too if I want to fly my drone safely.
In a way, it's all part of being a responsible drone operator. That's what I like about this book. It shows that awareness isn't just about airspace and weather. It's about respecting the wildlife that share that space.
Yeah, for sure. So as we wrap up our Indonesian drone regulations deep dive, what are the big takeaways you hope our listeners are walking away with today?
I think the big one is, Indonesia's serious about drone safety. As they should be. But the regulations, they're not impossible to work with. Do your research, understand the rules, be responsible about how you fly, and anyone can have an amazing time flying their drone in Indonesia.
Totally. And for our listeners, if this sparked your interest and you want to learn more, definitely check out the Remote Pilot Learning book yourself. It was a way more interesting read than I was expecting. Who knew there was so much to learn about flying a drone, huh?
Right. It shows that no matter how much you think you know, there's always more. Especially in aviation, it's constantly evolving. The tech, the regulations, the best practices, it all changes. Staying up to date is key for everyone.
Could agree more. All right, everyone, that's it for this deep dive. Happy flying. And remember, knowledge is your best bet for safe and responsible flying. We'll catch you next time.